Welcome to Simply Creepy, your #1 channel for all things spooky. In tonight's episode, we take a look at some of the creepy and unexplainable videos caught on CCTV cameras. If your biggest concern while playing video games is your internet connection giving you trouble, at least you're not being actively sabotaged by a poltergeist like this kid is. While minding his own business, the kid noticed how what seemed to be a strong current of wind easily opened the door of the room he was in, but he quickly dismissed it as something normal so that he could keep focusing on his video game. However, the poltergeist decided it wanted to be noticed one way or the other, so after being ignored by the child for a few moments, the poltergeist violently pushed his chair to the other side of the room. After experiencing this, the child decided to do what most other people would have done: sprint out of the room while calling for his mom. Our following clip takes place in the same house and room where the previous child was playing video games, but this time, the poltergeist decided to attack the kid's mother instead. At first, you can notice how one of the curtains in the room starts moving around as if someone was hiding behind them. But the mother didn't see this because she was paying attention to her phone. Unfortunately, as we already know, this is a very stubborn poltergeist, so it decided to start throwing objects around until the mother noticed its presence. The mother had no choice but to sprint out of the room as well, since there isn't that much you can do against an entity you can neither see nor touch. Talking or moving while we sleep can be a very scary thing on its own, even if it's actually something with a biological explanation. So imagine this woman's surprise after she went through the footage of the security camera she placed inside her bedroom and discovered the terrifying movements and facial gestures she was doing in her sleep. The woman had originally suspected that something weird was happening while she slept, because sometimes she would wake up at a different part of her home and not her bed. So she thought it was probably a case of regular sleepwalking, and tried to record it so she could show it to her doctor. Instead, she found out that something seems to be possessing her body while she sleeps, and the entity even stares at the camera as if it isn't afraid of being noticed, which makes the whole situation even more terrifying. This next clip is proof that maybe we should stop doubting kids so much when they tell us something weird is happening inside their rooms, because it might not actually be their imagination. After receiving constant complaints from his daughter that things were moving inside her room by themselves, a father decided to set up a security camera inside her room to reassure his daughter that nothing paranormal was actually happening there. However, it was the father that ended up swallowing his own words when the footage proved that not only was his daughter right, but that they had now angered the entity living in their home. Now, instead of simply moving objects around, the entity grabbed the child by her legs and pulled her out of the room into a different hallway before finally letting her go. In this clip, we see an even younger little girl that is also being harassed by a paranormal entity, but this time her innocence allows her to be extremely brave and face it on her own. Instead of panicking and calling for her parents, the girl stopped the entity from taking her toys and simply walks away like it was just a minor inconvenience in her day. The girl also stares at an empty space in front of her, as if she can actually see the entity as well, which makes sense considering children are usually more sensitive to those kinds of energies. Whatever it was, it seems like the girl is already used to dealing with it, and that she has been doing so for a while now. While staying in the guest room of one of their family members, a mother and her child started hearing weird noises around them. At first, the mother didn't think much of it and kept sleeping, But after a little while, she noticed that the toys and objects around her started moving by themselves around the room. At first, the mother didn't think much of it and kept sleeping, but after a little while she noticed that the toys and objects around her started moving by themselves around the room. She didn't think much of that either and simply moved some of them back to their original positions and kept sleeping after making sure her kid was okay. But as we have already seen in the previous clips, poltergeists hate being ignored, so the entity kept increasing the aggressiveness with which it threw the objects around the room, until eventually the mother had no choice but to grab her child and leave the room in a rush, even though it was still the middle of the night. Unlike previous entities, this one doesn't like to wait until it's nighttime to start bothering its victims. Instead, the entity randomly opens the cash register while the employee was waiting for customers to arrive. This is the first time this happened to this particular employee, which you can easily tell by her reaction to it. She seems to be in shock while glancing at the security camera multiple times, making sure it was actually recording the weird event that had just happened. Sadly, the employee clarified that many other weird events took place during her shifts after this, but they mostly happened away from the cash register where there aren't any cameras. This footage was captured in a hospital in Argentina a few months ago, and if you cannot see anything weird in it, that's precisely the issue here. The security guard in the clip swears that an old lady arrived at the hospital in the middle of the night and asked to be seen by a doctor, which is why the guard opens the rope safety barrier for her and lets her in. The guard also swears he even had an entire conversation with her and went as far as to check her information into the system for her to be evaluated and even tried to offer her a wheelchair after he registered her. After being approached by the day shift security guards that were double-checking the previous night's footage and were obviously weirded out by the conversation that the guard seemed to be having by himself, he clarified that he even checked her into the system. So after looking for that information, they realized that the same lady had already been at the hospital the day before and she had sadly passed away before the doctors could help her. What's even scarier is that the event took place at around 3:30 a.m., which is considered by the Christian church as the devil's time, because of its peak paranormal activity levels. To this day, the hospital employees have not been able to find a logical explanation for what happened that night. If you believe in the afterlife, chances are you're already familiarized with the astral plane. If you're not, the astral plane is simply described as a parallel realm next to ours, where cursed spirits and dreamwalkers wander around. With enough practice, some people are able to access the astral plane on purpose when their physical bodies fall asleep, but most of the times this happens randomly without the person trying to do so, which seems to be the case here. After the man fell asleep, the security camera was able to capture how his spirit left his body and then looked back to realize he was actually dreamwalking. A little while after moving into their new house, this family started noticing weird things happening all around the house, so they decided to set up security cameras that could help them confirm their suspicions.
Oh, bless them.
As you can see, the footage did indeed confirm paranormal activity similar to that of a poltergeist that constantly moves things around the house whether there are people inside the room or not. The scariest part is that the poltergeist has even grabbed things from the family members' hands as if it isn't afraid to be physically aggressive towards them as well. The following clip takes us to the road, where we see how a car's dashcam captures a creature moving around a field in the middle of the night in a very quick manner. The creature seems to be very slim and completely naked, and its movements seem to be too fast for a regular human or animal. In fact, we can barely get an idea of the creature's shape in the brief moments where it moves from cover to cover as it tries to escape the car's headlights. According to the people who posted the video, they also heard weird sounds, as if something was trying to imitate the voice of a real person. which led them to believe their footage captured a skinwalker or a wendigo trying to lure its prey into the dark woods. That concludes this episode of Creepy Moments Caught on CCTV Cameras. Be sure to like this video and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future videos. Goodbye, everybody, and make sure you lock your doors.